It's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
Hello, so we're back a couple of days later than our classic on the button post-final game pod in this episode, purely due to the fact that I'm selfishly moving house later on this week and we had to find time at work. But we come to you in good spirits, maybe because my move has come through finally and I'm drinking, and Nick, well, just because he's drinking no doubt, although I think he got the jab today as well, so halfway on the road to immunity. No Anthony for fun time this week. He and the correspondence will return after this national break, but as you heard, the Universal's here. And he's jabbed up. Nick, you all right?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, fully jabbed. Got my vaccination today. If you're wondering why we're both vaccinated, and you've got some spare time actually over the international break, then it's worth checking out our Get to Know You pod, which we didn't do last summer. I think it was the summer before that we recorded it. Just a little bit about us and why we did the podcast in the first place. So yeah, check that out if you haven't already. Otherwise, it's great to be finally vaccinated. Starting to think the end of the lockdown is really could happen at some point. So all positive. Reminder, of course, who we are. We are Who Got the Assist. Make sure to give us a follow on social media if you haven't already. Tom at WGTA_FPL, myself at WGTA_Nick, and Anthony at FPL Stag, and also Instagram. Give us a follow there if you haven't already. It's WGTA.FPL, and the mini league code as well if you want to join our league is cpsulf. So I'll give a quick roundup of what we're going to discuss. I think we're just going to literally just have a little bit about the home straight and how we're going to attack it. So there's no fixed agenda really, just to chat about a wide range of things and about how the template could shift as we enter the business end of the season. Correspondence also going to take a back seat due to time constraints, but it will be back with Anthony's return. It's not dead, we promise.
We haven't killed Anthony. We haven't killed the section. I just don't feel like I could do it justice / speak in his Irish chipmunk mode, which is trademark to him, I suppose. But as usual, let's start off with the game reviews and the market forces. Nick, I believe you didn't have the best of blank game week 29s.
No, it was really bad. It was 39 points. Actually, to be honest, like the red arrow wasn't too severe. I don't, it was from 79k back to 97k, which was the same sort of rank I was in game week 27 anyway. So, it's not a huge fall, but it's just unfortunate because I feel like this was a week where we saw some people actually who free hitted. I think Anthony smashed it with sort of about getting double my score around 78.
Yeah, he got 78. Yeah, he's up to the top 50k now, Anthony.
Which is so that's just what could have been essentially. Instead, I really just got everything wrong, I guess. In terms of my transfers, I transferred in Gareth Bale, and he didn't actually start. So that was a 0-pointer for him. I neglected picking the likes of Lingard or Trossard. I didn't go for those guys, unfortunately. Because I had 10 men as well for this week. This is what's so frustrating. Is like I felt like I prepped for it. I had my team ready, but just the likes of Triple Villa, for instance, you absolutely rubbish. They all blanked. Dallas blanked. Maja got subbed at half time. Just rubbish. So the only guys that actually did well, I got a Captain Kane for 7 times 2 is not particularly great, I guess. Rafinha 8-pointer, and I also got in Veltman. He was the star of the game week really for me with that 10-point return. So yeah, a little bit of Veltmania there, but yeah, no Trossard, no Lingard, no Patrick Bamford really did the damage there. But oh well, you live and learn. At least it's not too damaging in terms of the rank fall. But what about yourself, Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, I was literally a Bamford away from a similar sort of outcome to you. I took -4. I think it was a last minute -4, actually. I think I did that about 20 minutes to spare, I think. Removed Cancelo for Veltman, removed Salah for Rafinha. And with about 20 minutes to go, I did Bamford in for Diane, which meant I got a 25 point, if you take away the -4, swing on players I was bringing in. And those 3 performing, plus Antonio with the 2 assists with the 7, alongside Kane captain, got me 54 points, -4, which is 50, which was not great. I could have got Lingard potentially, or Trossard in. But the reality was, I never really looked at either of the guard twins, just because I had Antonio anyway, and I thought Trossard, well, 1 week punt, I've already got Beltman. So yeah, 50 overall, which was okay. I think they took me up to about 250k. But yeah, really looking forward to this home straight chat, because I want to see what we do from now on. I'm hoping to maybe do something a little bit, well, hopefully take some tips from it and to help me get to where I want to be this year, rather than ending up bobbing around at the 200Ks again. Right, let's move on to the market forces briefly, Nick. And it is all about Lingardium Leviosa, isn't it? Jesse J. Lingard, Messi Lingard, some are dubbing him. Well, dabbing him, I suppose, is probably the best way of putting it. Rising up the ranks, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely. It's a crazy old season, isn't it? With another goal and assist, he's topping the market forces with 107,000 transfers in at time of recording. But is he overperforming? Who knows? He's getting the goals, he's getting the assists. Bring him in. I certainly made a mistake not getting him in for the game week 29. So lots of people looking at those returns from old Jesse or young Jesse and getting that youngster in. So yeah. I guess no surprises there based on the returns that he's been producing recently, and he was unlucky as well to get another goal thanks to a dodgy offside call. So yeah, Lingard leading the line in terms of the market forces. Otherwise, it's kind of a couple of what I'd call perhaps safe picks for the close season. You've got Bruno Fernandes and Kevin De Bruyne second and third on the market versus market forces, with about 65,000 transfers in at time of recording. So it feels like a few people might have sold them because of the blank in 29. But getting back on those safe picks in Bruno, in Kevin, Bruno's probably going to be the top scorer this season. De Bruyne was the top scorer last season. Safe picks for the final hurdles, let's say. And otherwise, a couple more interesting picks, perhaps. Iheanacho, he's doing excellently at the moment. Really stepped up his game in the absence of the likes of Harvey Barnes, and he picked up a hat-trick at Sheffield United. Brace against Manchester United as well in the FA Cup. So lots of people targeting him. We'll talk about him a little bit later. And Mason Mount, we'll also talk about him a little bit later as well when we cover Chelsea. 55,000 transfers in for him. Another perhaps safe pick for the close season.
I just love the fact that 60,000 people bought in Iheanacho last week as well. I mean, didn't have a game. It's just one of those classic sort of FPL robot, FPL lemming sort of situations, wasn't it? Probably saw the goal in the FA Cup and thought, oh, why aren't I getting those points in FPL? Or at least in my head, this what these people are doing. And in the sales, Nick, it's not particularly surprising, is it? It's pretty much those players who did all blank, although the man in fifth, 11 points, Bamford, and he's still being sold. I don't get that.
Yeah, that's a bit of an odd one, but he does have a yellow flag still, so he's got a knock, apparently 75% chance of playing. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but yeah, I guess that's why he's being sold. People seeing the yellow flag thinking, I better sell this guy, which seems a bit of a dodgy move. And plus, yeah, I was going to say these fixtures. They've got Sheffield United at home, haven't they, in game week 30? So yeah, no, it seems a bit brash from a few people there. But yeah, as you said, it's the players that blanked or didn't play at all. So Son and Bale didn't play. Son's being sold heavily, but he might be back. We don't know at this moment in time for the next game. Hopefully he will be, because I own him. And Gareth Bale, brought him in, looks like a massive error because he didn't even start or get a single minute. So he's being sold as well. But they do have Newcastle up next. So that was one of the reasons Bale came in for me. And I'm hopeful that he will play in that game. You don't know, but and get some returns, because if not, he's definitely out the door. And Aubameyang, also being heavily sold, 56,000 transfers out for him. Another sort of blank game week punts that people went for that's not worked out. Very expensive punt as well. So no surprises really that he's probably been turfed out for the likes of Fernandes and De Bruyne, much safer picks. And Ollie Watkins, of course, get him out, just get rid straight away. 47,000 transfers out for him. Another player that's dunk up that blank game week for me.
Yeah, Bond or Watkins. The only other thing I just want to observe is that Brighton players are featuring in the top 30 for transfers out. So very much a case of a 1 week fling with those guys. Dunk, Trossard and Mopé all in the top 30 for transfers out thus far, at least. Although it has slowed down, of course, due to the fact that it's an international break. All right, so let's go to the main sort of thrust of the chat this week, which is attacking the home straight, as Nick mentioned. We probably won't cover everything, but I guess let's talk about what's going on with a few teams, Nick, a few strategies we might be following. Just to give some context, I've got a beer open because, hey, my house finally came through. Nick does too. So we're really just doing a bit of a chilled international break pod, enjoying the fact that this one doesn't have less than 24 hours shelf life. So we're swapping a hectic life for a bit of a park life here. So yeah, cheers. Just to say as well that at the time of recording, Game Week 32 is up in the air for many teams. There's not much we can do about this. And if you check your FPL, if you're listening to this on the week of the 22nd, you'll see that there are a lot of games that have currently been removed. And Ben Crellin seems to think that there's a high chance of games being rescheduled into the midweek of that week. So it's all going to kind of come back to how it was in some way, shape, or form. Planet FPL has spoken about this as well, so go listen to that if you want to hear about the kind of the calendar movements. And if there are any machinations, we'll of course discuss it later down the line. But in general, I think that international break will give managers time to readjust and rethink. Whether it's fantasy managers or real managers, the relentlessness of the Prem so far has been really tough to navigate, hasn't it, Nick? And I guess working with the fixtures going forwards and looking at a few teams, there are a few things that come to mind, aren't there? Like City, I guess they're the big one, aren't they? What are you going to do with those guys? Because people have got two. I got Cancelo, so I used to have three. Are we going to keep hold of them? James Carroll is asked, is it even optimal to have free City? If so, which? City, Nick, what are you doing with those guys?
So I did sell John Stones last game week for Veltman. I'm actually considering getting rid of Cancelo as well. Seems a bit crazy, to be honest, to be selling all my City assets. But I know it's a bit of a lame answer, but I think the rotation is a big concern, plus the blank in game week 33. So they've had a really intense period of fixture congestion in general. And, they've really not had time at all to sit down for any coffee and TV at all. And, after the international break, it continues for them. They've got Leicester in the league, but then they've got Dortmund midweek, then Leeds at the weekend, Dortmund again midweek, then they've got Chelsea in the FA Cup. So I'm looking at, some of my players, the likes of Cancelo. He's a starting player for City, no doubt about it. He's in Pep's best 11, but is Pep going to actually play the best 11 in the league? Probably not, because let's be honest, the league's wrapped up. The key match for them is the Dortmund match, where he wants to win the Champions League with this club, with this team, doesn't he? So
yeah,
is Cancelo going to play, or is it going to be a chance to the likes of Zinchenko or Mendy or someone to get a few minutes, Kyle Walker perhaps as well, and Cancelo will be saved for the cup? We never really try and predict Pep, but that is my concern. There's been a little bit of rotation there. John Stones as well, as I said, I sold him, and there's been so much rotation with Stones. But I actually think though, like the likes of Stones, there's a few others like Cancelo and Mahrez. They've been absolutely amazing FPL assets this season if they play. And I had a quick look at all three of those guys, just their points per game. So Stones has had 6.8 points per game a season, but he's actually only played 18 of the 28 games. Cancelo's had 5.3. He's played a few more games than Stones, but he's still missed out on a number. And then Mahrez, 5.6. He's only actually started 19 of the 28 games. So there's so much rotation with those guys that it's like, if you want to keep free, fair enough, go for it. But just make sure you've got a strong bench and you've got people that you can rely on that can come off the bench and deliver, like your Dallases and people like that you can trust.
Yeah, I think because we've got loads of money at the moment, we'll come on to why that might be in a little bit. We are in a situation where perhaps that is a thing where you'd be okay to have the triple City and just kind of say, you know what, I've got a bench to cover me if it doesn't quite work out, because they are still, quite an unstoppable force, dear old City. The last 6 games, over 100 shots, over 20 big chances, 6 XG more than the team in second, Leicester. 4 more XA than team in second, Leicester again. So you put them in a bit. And 446 points scored over the last 6 game weeks. 99 more points than Chelsea, who are in second. Again, we'll discuss them later. The fixtures are okay, as Nick's mentioned, but as Nick just touched on, you need to have that player actually playing. And Cancelo, his reign from the highest owned defender has dropped off. He's gone from being the manager's darling to a charmless man, hasn't he? He's still in the top 10 for XG and XA amongst defenders, but the uncertainty over him and the likes of Stones as well are causing sales. I've still got Diaz. I've got quite a bit of money sort of tied up in him. I think I'll keep hold of him for the time being, but I'm completely behind you, Nick. I think that I'd be happy to kind of start divesting my City assets. I think I'm going to likely hold Diaz and hold one other man, Gundogan. And I suppose one of the big questions that we've now got is what do we do with Gundogan? He's a City dweller. He's a successful fella. He's got fab value. And the run from game week 13 to 24, when he scored 111 points, won't be forgotten in a hurry. He's still just 6.1 million. But owners, Nick, have to be worried, don't they? Since game week 25, he's only managed one goal. He's only touched in the box against Southampton. And he's only managed 19 points over the last kind of 6. So Gundogan, Nick, what are you planning to do with him?
I think for me, Gundogan, he's a season keeper. There's a little bit of concern, as you said, his numbers have dropped off slightly, but he did score in the cup as well. So, that's always a positive when you see your players, even though you don't get points, it's always a positive to see a return. Showing that they're in good form. And just, in terms of the numbers, I know you said it dropped off recently, but I was looking overall, really, the course of the season, he's had the 6th highest XG across all midfielders with 8.15, 8.15, and he scored a ridiculous 12 goals. And actually, his first goal of the season didn't come till game week 13. So before that, he was being like the Gundogan we knew and didn't particularly love of old, which didn't really get forward and get goals and do things like that. But since game week 13, when he went on that ridiculous run, he's actually scored more goals than any other player in the league, even more than Harry Kane. So he scored 12 goals in that period. Kane's only scored 8. So, in that period, as a 6.1 million pound midfielder, I'm not going to sell this guy. I said I'm disinvesting in maybe some of the City defenders because of the rotation, but I think this guy can sit there right until the end of the season. And, they're free scoring. They're such a great attacking team. And he's as I said, there's a little bit of rotation there, but in sort of the central midfield type roles, he pretty much plays most games anyway. So I don't think he's going to be as heavily rotated as the wingers, as the fullbacks that kind of have to expel a little bit more energy just rushing up and down those wings all the time.
Sure. I don't know. I think I'm probably going to keep holding for the time being, but come game week 33, when they've got that blank, he could definitely become one of those players that a big question mark emerges over. Especially if he's one of those that's just ubiquitous hold for people. Lots of people just have him in there. They just think, as you said, Nick, great value, this guy, only 6.1/5.5 buy for people like me who've had him for quite a while, maybe even better for a few others. So there could be an opportunity there to get involved with a different player, be it City or non. I like the Mahrez call, for example. I had a look at him over the last 6. He's actually scored the most FPL points, 54. But these are amazing hauls considering his XG is 1.31. He's actually scored 4 goals with that. 0 big chances. And his XA has been 1.23, but he's got 4 assists with only 1 big chance created. He could be a really fun differential. I know you had him last year, didn't you, on Project Restart? His ownership is pretty low. So he could be an example of another player you could grab in City. But I mean, the rotation station is the big thing here, isn't it? And you may be thinking, you know what, it might be better to have players who will pivot toward players in different teams who don't have that sort of level of risk about them and don't basically mean you're going to end up playing your 4.5 million defender every other week because you just can't trust these players to start. Expected minutes is quite a difficult thing, isn't it, in FPL? I suppose on the other side of it, I spoke a little bit about making money a second ago. Well, he's touched on making money. Some of that's to do with Liverpool. So, I sold off Mo Salah this week. But their last 8 really caught my eye looking into this because they've got Arsenal, Aston Villa, Leeds, Newcastle, Man United, Southampton, West Brom, Burnley and Crystal Palace. That last 4 is really good looking, isn't it? We'll see what FPL Stag says, Anthony says on the beach special next time. But I mean Liverpool, Nick, do you have any interest in them? Because they are, to the eye, a team that's completely lost their mojo, aren't they? But at the same time, those fixtures are very enticing. Are they a team with no distance left to run, or are you thinking there could be a space for one of them?
It's very contrasting to Manchester City, isn't it? Their season. I mean, this is a low for them, isn't it? It really is, and everything's quite tender for Liverpool this season. It's I think it's just unfathomable, really, that most of us now are in a scenario where we don't have any of their players, especially with those fixtures. And considering for the last few campaigns, at least, the triple up was all but essential. I mean, looking at the defenders, Trent and Robbo, they're creating a lot of chances. So in the last 5 game weeks, Trent has created 12 chances, which is the joint most of all defenders with Luke Shaw. Over the course of the campaign, both Trent and Robbo are second and third for chances created, 47 and 45. But it's worth highlighting that their actual assist output has dropped markedly from last campaign. So Trent's been really unlucky only to get 3 assists, and Robertson's only had the 5, and you can perhaps blame the front 3 to a certain extent not being able to convert them. But I think, those guys are very, very expensive, feels a bit punty. If you're really looking for some bargains in the Liverpool defence, you could watch the next couple of games and see if Nat Phillips actually can nail down that slot, because he could just be a real
4.0, my God.
4.0 hero. Picking up clean sheets against the likes of West Brom and Gang and Newcastle, these easy fixtures that they've got to come. He could be someone that just fits in very nicely if he is nailed on. Otherwise, I think Kabak probably is more likely to. He's probably the most nailed on of all the central defenders, at least for the end of the campaign, with Van Dijk and Gomez and Matip all looking like they're out for the season. So, a couple of options there, I guess, in defence.
Small at Kabak with Liverpool, I suppose, in some ways. But it is those attacking players. I mean, I know we've had Trent and Robbo being a mainstay of many of our teams throughout the course of the last couple of years, as you're saying it. But owning a Salah, especially owning Salah, we've spoken about him more than any other player on this pod. Not owning him is just a bit bizarre, but the big issue at the moment for them is conversion, as far as I can see. It's just ridiculous numbers, basically. So on FB Ref, great resource, go and check it out. They've got the highest XG to goals scored under performance in Europe, I think it is. They've got the second highest XG from open play. Actual goals scored, though, is 31, so they're underperformed by 7. As Nick said, this is surely a low. The last 6 game weeks, the points totals make abysmal reading as well. So the highest scoring Liverpool asset over the last 6 is Trent with 23 points, which is, I just can't believe that. Behind him, Salah and Robertson, 19 points each. And only Salah, Jones and Jota have scored in the last 6 game weeks from 81 shots. So a conversion rate of just 3%. Wow. Amazing. Like losses against the likes of Fulham, Everton, the damaging ones to Chelsea and City, as we've seen, I've left them floundering. And I think, Nick, our faith in their players is destroyed. But I saw you just out you from what you say on our Slack group, saying that you were looking at Jota and maybe getting Salah in because you had the money and doubling up. Is that a case of fixtures over form, perhaps? That sounds quite interesting. I'm interested in Jota. That's great. But both, really?
Yeah, this wasn't for this week, to be honest. This was something I was just thinking a little bit down the line, maybe. I mean, next week they've got Arsenal. That's going to be a tough game. But I think, it is sort of like the fixtures. I was kind of just looking at that final run, from sort of game week 32. Jota as well. He's the cheaper option, certainly. And, when he's missed a lot of the campaign, to be fair, but when he has played, he's been really exciting to watch and, real breath of fresh air. Perhaps their only good news story of the entire season, really. So he's had 6 goals for them, and it's over 698 minutes. That's a goal every 116 minutes. He's sort of had a chance every 30.5 minutes as well. So he's getting plenty of opportunities and really proved himself earlier on in the campaign, started to be a key starter for them as well. So I kind of thought maybe he would be the best option just because he's only 6.6, so you're not spending a lot of money if you want to get Jota. Salah, of course, very, very expensive, 12.4 million. But as I said as well, kind of like if you've got the money, then why not? And, I'm ditching probably the likes of Bale, the likes of Son, maybe after getting 30. So I thought, well, maybe I could move them on to the get on the Liverpool assets and hope I can take advantage of the fixture shift.
Yeah, no, I think the Jota, from watching them against Wolves, admittedly there was the kind of the old club sort of thing going on, but he looked like the one most likely to do something, didn't he? I was considering moving Gundogan to Jota, but at the end of the day, we've all got so much money, haven't we, at the moment, because we've sold the likes of Salah, because the likes of KDB aren't in our teams anymore. Well, obviously there's a select few who've done very well out of owning KDB, getting back on him, but I think a lot of people are kind of awash with cash at the moment. I guess those are the teams, Liverpool and Man City, who are obviously going to be figuring highly in our thoughts. But there are a couple of teams I think that we should be kind of pivoting towards for this final 8. They are Chelsea and Leicester. And I think the next 5 for Chelsea are especially eye-catching. So West Brom, Crystal Palace, Brighton, West Ham and Fulham, pending Vector, of course. A good 4 out of 5 games there. In attack, I mean, you've heard of the Pep Roulette, but I think the Tickle Tombola is another one I'm just not sure I want to be involved with. Kai Havertz, whatever, Mason Mount, who I'm sure Nick's going to speak about, decent cover and all that. But there's no other way. There's no other way. All you can do is watch them play. All you realise is that the defence is where it's at for Chelsea, I think. So over the last 10 game weeks with Tickle in charge, just 2 goals conceded, 8 clean sheets, 6 big chances conceded, the lowest of any team, the fewest shots conceded as well. And next you see you have just 5.56, 2 fewer than the nearest competitors, who are Brighton, according to this. Interesting. For context, their XGC is almost half that of Man City's, that imperious defence just a few weeks ago. It's ridiculous stuff. And Chelsea's defence reminds me a little bit, when we look through the FPL options, of Man City's this season, because you've got these kind of 3 amigos at the back. You've got Rudiger, who's a John Stone sort of character, Azpilicueta or Dave as the Diaz character, and Alonso as the obvious Cancelo. However, this time we've got that awkward sort of Hindu monkey style 4th amigo, as Mendy is more of an option than Ederson was. And obviously you've got Reims and Ingerson hanging around. But, just before I hand over to you, Nick, I just want to mention that the ownership is so low for these guys. It's unreal. They're all under 10% owned. Mendy 7.9%, Azpilicueta 6.3%, Rudiger 4.5%, and Alonso 2.5%. A combination is huge if you can pull it off. And I'm really looking at Azpilicueta to come in, I think, boring old Azpi. I do like Alonso. He's doing all right in sort of the analog stats. But yeah, Azpilicueta and Rudiger, pairing them together and hopefully kind of making hay with those fixtures at the low ownership. I really like that idea for West Brom onwards, I think. So yeah, I'm really interested in Chelsea's defence, and I think I'll be doubling up this week. What do you think about the defence, Nick, for Chelsea? And what do you also think about Mason Mount? I'm sure you've got a lot to say on him.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the defence. I think certainly since they chucked out the guy who lives in a very big house in the country, things have really, really changed for the better at Chelsea. And Tuchel's done a great job. As you said, those defensive stats particularly are very impressive. Just got 2 goals conceded. I'm sure he'll be disappointed to only have scored 11 goals, though, over there to 10 games. So I don't think he's quite got the attack sorted quite yet. But we'll start at the defence. I know we've both got Rudiger, but certainly he's the one who's sort of the trusted man, at least, in this sort of tombola of rotation. He's played pretty much every game since Tuchel took charge. I think he's only missed 1. So definitely a solid pick if you're looking for a player that's sort of relatively cheap as well. I think he's dropped down to about 4.6 million, who can slot in and get you a clean sheet. But it's Alonso, Marcos Alonso, that's the one that's catching my eye. Getting to that stage of the season where you're looking at some of these players, fancy a really interesting punt, and it's certainly that Chilwell seems to be out of favour at the moment. Alonso seems to be the one who's picked as well when then they need to go on attack a little bit more. And just a bit of nostalgia here, but the past 4 years he's averaged 9.5 attacking returns a season, and it's just been the 1 goal so far. But the West Brom home game, very appetizing.
So tempting.
I was going to say his stats as well have been pretty good, actually, to be fair, for when he's played. 15 goal attempts, 10 inside the box, which is a chance every 46.9 minutes, which is the best of all the defenders in the leagues for goal attempts per minute. So that's particularly interesting. And, he's been creating a few chances as well, with chance every 59 minutes, about the same as Robertson and better than Aaron Cresswell, who's picked up a ridiculous amount of assists this season. So, big fan of Alonso.
Yeah, he is the ultimate nostalgia pick, isn't he? I think it's just because Chilwell played very well in the Cup, and he will be up for kind of competing, of course. But Chilwell is away in the international break. Alonso didn't get called up by Spain. I just think, for the West Brom game, it could be very alluring, but over the long term, Azpilicueta probably does fit the boring is good mantra. Again, having the DS Stones over having the Stones and Cancelo sort of thing, I guess, as an analog. But I guess with him, I may not hear the heavy metal of Alonso, but I feel like with the other options, I'd be like, all of the time, I'm never sure why I need you. But Azpilicueta, Dave is there when I need him. So probably he is the better option. Oh, it's tough, but I genuinely think that having 2 Chelsea defenders is going to be a really good idea for the end of the season. Of course, they've got other competitions that are going to be affecting them. So maybe it is a case of kind of hoping you have one of two every now and again, but every now and again you will get the double. And those fixtures over the next 5 at least are good enough that you maybe will want to play Tickle Tombola and see how you get along. But I guess if you were playing the Tickle Tombola, Nick, I guess you're a big fan of Mason Mount, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. I think, as you alluded to, the rest of the players are just being heavily rotated. I mean, we had Ziyech had his time in the stars very briefly at the start of the season. Pulisic just never really merged, last season hero. And Havertz sort of starting to appear, I guess, picked up a couple of assists, but not quite the player we've seen in the Bundesliga. But yeah, Mason Mount, he definitely feels like the safest bet of all the attacking midfielders, played the most minutes, also had the most goal attempts and most goals apart from Jorginho, who's the sort of penalty merchant. But I'm actually particularly impressed as well with his creative stats. So 69 chances, which is 4th best in the league. One less than De Bruyne, so he's been quite unlucky really to only have 5 assists for his troubles. You can blame Werner's finishings to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he's a pretty decent pick. There's probably another boring pick from me, I guess, but yeah, I think Mount, he's not the most exciting player in the world, is he, Tom? And
it could be good one to just throw in, I suppose.
Dullard pick, but why not? Punt for the end of the season again.
Yeah, exactly. I just feel like Werner's going to be next season's man. I think everyone's going to be like, we've got a file on you. You're going to be a player that we're going to write off. And I think that after kind of Tickle gets a pre-season with this guy and gets the team kind of how he wants them playing, I wouldn't be surprised if Werner does become a bit of a force next year. Sometimes I do see this, but there's a bit of a lag with players. You have the Aubameyangs who come in, smash it. Other ones do take a little while to kind of find their feet, and it may be that's the case with Werner. It's unfortunate because often we kind of say, well, the German league and the Premier League, they kind of translate very well. It just doesn't seem to have happened, does it? Right, let's move on to another team in blue that we may be looking at, who are Leicester. So over the last 6, they're second for XG, second for XA, some distance behind Man City. Very impressive considering they've been missing their key creative force in James Maddison. The fixtures are decent. So after City in 31, which is great actually, that game, it's really, really good because you've got time to watch and see what happens with them unless you jump in and think Iheanacho versus old club, or maybe Pep play the high line and Vardy will destroy them. But they've got West Ham away in 32. Then 2 really lovely home fixtures in West Brom and Palace. Palace coming in the 33 blank, followed by Southampton and Newcastle. Definite interest there. As I didn't mention, Iheanacho is doing really well in the market forces, and he's just on a Nikic Jelovic level of running hot at the moment. 7 goals in his last 8 strikes. Overall, in the last 6, he's top for big chances. Vardy's actually second with 6. He's actually top for non-pen XG. Vardy's actually second for that as well. And he scored the most goals in the Premier League. But of course, we have to include that hat-trick in the last 6 game weeks of the last 8 games. And Vardy, interesting enough, has created 4 of Iheanacho's last goals. So they're doing a proper kind of Aubameyang, Lacazette sort of thing. But modern life is a bit rubbish for Jamie Vardy. He's not managed to score in the last 5 games. But either way, no, they're great differentials. 90% ownership for Vardy, 3% for Nacho, Nick. Are there gains to be had from looking at Leicester there, or maybe elsewhere in the team?
Nacho, he's definitely one that I'm considering bringing in, perhaps for Ollie Watkins, maybe come game week 31, as you said, see what happens in that Manchester City game, see what news emerges about game week 32. Hopefully those fixtures do happen. Otherwise, we're all screwed. But yeah, he's perhaps the one I'm looking at. As you said, only costs 5.7 million, just on fire, just hitting that form right now. Some great underlying stats in those last 5 game weeks. You alluded to sort of minutes per chance. It's every 22.4 minutes, and Kane's had a better minutes per chance in those last 5 game weeks, and he's had the most big chances as well with 7, and picked up a couple of assists actually as well for his troubles. So great time, as you said. A couple of easy fixtures. Not going to play Sheffield United week in, week out. He wasn't in the starting 11, but the likes of Harvey Barnes coming back probably by 31, but I can't see him being dropped in the current form. Rodgers has got to play him surely. So, I'm relatively confident he's going to continue to be played. I'm really considering him.
Yeah, it's not Football Manager. I see people say that all the time. Oh, he's going to be dropped as soon as Maddison and Barnes are back. No, a player is never dropped if they're performing well. I'm not going to say form because I know it upsets a few people, but if a player is on a hot streak, as long as the manager can go, yeah, you know what, bro? Well, Barnes is back now, so you're out. It's just not going to happen. is it? But yeah, I'm really looking at Nacho as well, just because Bamford is Sheffield United, and then he comes up against Manchester City, Liverpool, and United in quick succession. I know it's Leeds; they could create chances against anyone, but those are three decent defences. I know Liverpool, I know. So maybe he could be a really easy swap to Nacho. But there's always Vardy, isn't there, Nick? And I've said in this pod a couple of times, I'm done with Vardy. If I'm crawling back to Vardy, I'll explain why I'm doing it. I won't try to weather vane myself, but I'm gonna. The door's always going to have to be open to old Jamie, isn't it, Nick?
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't be writing off his career anytime soon, because despite his age, he's continued to confound the critics every season that he's played for Leicester. And I mean, this season's been similar again for him, and he's actually notched up so many assists just quite quietly as well. Actually, 12 assists this season, along with the 12 goals that he scored. So, yeah, definitely not a time to write him off. I think my only concern with Vardy is probably costs, 10.1 million. I think there's other options out there that are a lot cheaper and better punts, and his teammate Nacho is certainly one of those right now.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously keep out an eye for Maddison and Barnes when they're back. So yeah, a couple of teams who perhaps would be pivoting to from the Man City players or from other players like the Spurs players, as Nick's mentioned. But another one as well, which caught my eye, are Wolves. And maybe they fit into Liverpool, sort of a case of fixtures over form. None of their players is over 7% owned. The most is Neto at 6.8%. But the next five are really, really good, especially if you look at the defensive ratings on tickets. I know they haven't been great. And obviously I used how bad they've been defensively as a reason for why I captained Salah a couple of weeks ago. But they've got West Ham, Fulham, Sheffield United, Burnley, West Brom and Brighton before a tough final three. You could do worse than punt on somebody like Seiss. You could do worse than look at someone like Johnny, who's got 0% ownership, 0%. He scored 123 points last season. Last year, Wolves kept 13 clean sheets. It's just been 8 this year in a weird sort of transitional season for them. But Nick, I mean, looking at those fixtures that are remaining for them, I mean, I think we are probably looking at the defence unless you fancy a wild Neto punt. But look at those fixtures and thinking about kind of the legacy of having quite a strong defence. Maybe you fancy another couple of clean sheets at least out of that. I mean, after that West Ham game, do you think, which is a top 6 game now, do you think the rest of those fixtures look ripe for a few points? Because I think they do. If I was wildcarding, I'd certainly be probably trying to sneak a Seiss in or sneak a Johnny in, or even old man Connor Cody, who seems to be getting forward these days.
Yeah, he certainly is. I think, after that West Ham game, looking at that next five, it's probably 5 of the 6 worst attacking teams in the Premier League, with Newcastle being the other one to mention out of that 6. So, there's a good chance of maybe 3, even 4 clean sheets in that period if they get their act together. And certainly I considered like Connor Cody, and he's like one of those players that, like Lingard, we thought we'd never be suggesting on this podcast. But he what's good about Cody is he is nailed on in the defence. He plays every single game. So I think Seiss got dropped for a little period, was out of favour for whatever reason. But Cody isn't. Cody's the club captain. He's their key man, and he's getting forward. So like last season, he famously didn't register a single goal attempt, but this season he's had 6, and he's even scored for them against City, much to our chagrin, because obviously a lot of us had double defence in that particular game week. Had Stones and Cancelo, very frustrating. But I certainly think he could be a solid pick for that fixture run. Someone who can sit there, he's going to play, and he's probably going to get some clean sheets for you as well. So it's all about the clean sheets. With the attack, as you said, they've looked very blunt, especially since Jimenez got injured. Since he got injured in game week 10, or had that awful head injury, they've only scored 17 goals, which is the 5th worst in the league for attacking returns. And like William Jose done nothing, Fabio Silva nothing. Pedro Neto, as you said, is probably the only one that I would recommend or suggest. And he's actually underlying stats very, very similar to Mason Mount, very, very similar across all the metrics. So if you're not looking at Mount or haven't got money for Mount, you could punt on Neto at 5.7 million. I think he'd be a really good pick there.
Yeah, absolutely. So a few kind of teams there in terms of what has been and what could be going forward. So Liverpool are kind of in that weird sort of hinterland between being a has-been team, the team you may want to move into. But a couple of other things that kind of come to mind here, just a bit of housekeeping. There's the whole Operation Target. I don't mean Matt Target, but target a team. So target Sheffield United and also target Newcastle have come to mind. And this sort of narrative to target a team comes back every year because it's such a good song. It's such a sweet song. Think, target Norwich last year, that salient memory of Antonio's 4 goals. But Sheffield United looked at their data, one word, abysmal. Their XGC over the last 6 is 15.71. So they're expected to concede almost 3 goals per game. That's an astonishing 25 big chances conceded in that time. That's just in 6 games, by the way. So they're conceding just over 4 big chances per game. 45 shots on target in 6 as well, 7.5 per game. And Wilder's gone, so they're dropping. It's hard for Heckingbottom to negotiate, to motivate them now. And you could look to captain against them in half of their remaining games. So Leeds game week 30, Bamford or Rafinha. They conceded a hell of a lot of chances in the middle. That kind of sense of back triple up is not working anymore. So Bamford's definitely my thoughts for that. Game week 31, Arsenal, so Aubameyang, Lacazette, whatever. Game week 32, probably not because there's double game week elsewhere. Brighton 33 if you fancy a Warner and Mopay, but definitely 34 Kane and 36 as well Everton. So the likes of Calvert-Lewin or Richarlison could be in our teams for an Everton double game week. But I mean, they could be one team you could look at. Another one, Nick, is Newcastle, of course. The meek surrender versus Brighton. Yeah, I mean, they're going to keep it tight, but they're still second bottom for expected clean sheets over the last 6. Another potential target, Liverpool away in 33, Arsenal home 34, Leicester away in 35, and Man City home in 36. So loads of options to target teams like these. Is it, Nick, the ultimate sort of end of season business end thing to just mercilessly go after these teams? Because I'm definitely going to be captaining a Leeds player against Sheffield United. So I'll say that now. I'm definitely doing it just because, well, I should. Are you as interested in targeting these teams, or is it very much kind of a week to week thing for you still?
I certainly think that they're worth targeting. I mean, that's part of the reason that I, trying to justify my Bale transfer in. I was trying to look at the longer picture, really. And I saw, obviously, Brighton having sort of Man U at 30, Spurs having Newcastle. I thought, well, perfect to show his flat track bully skills, though obviously he's a bit out of favour now, so looking like a bit of a dodgy punt. But that's part of the reason I was, bringing him in for that Newcastle game. So yeah, they look like a team completely in disarray. I'd probably stage. So certainly think it's worth targeting them. As you said, Sheffield United been appalling going forward. So, good chances for clean sheets. So as we said, like for Connor Cody or whoever, Johnny maybe even, could be a good punt there. Just 16 goals in 29 games is just a rubbish return. The other thing I thought worth highlighting as well, targeting, is West Brom. And I'm planning on targeting them this week with Alonso, perhaps as my transfer in. So Allardyce just hasn't been able to make the impact he has in previous seasons with other relegation-threatened clubs, and his 57 goals conceded is the worst in the league, and 170 shots on target as well, the worst in the league over the course of the campaign. So target West Brom as well, Chelsea assets. You probably won't be getting Southampton players in, but Leicester in 32, so the likes of Nacho or Vardy or Madison Barnes, whoever, could be good punts or good picks for that week as well.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said for the strategy of targeting these sort of teams. I know we'd always kind of be looking at doing that in terms of captaincy or whatever, but there's definitely been this sort of creep towards kind of being worried about EO that we've seen throughout the course of the kind of the middle part of the season. Obviously, there's been a lot of chatter, Nick, about why people captain Kane this week, and he was obviously hugely owned versus taking a chance on the like of Trossard, the likes of Lingard. In the cold light of hindsight, where that free hit week just went basically to plan. So if you were to make a free hit, basically all the players you'd have brought in, so maybe double Brighton defence, plus Brighton midfielder, plus likes of Lingard, you name it, bringing in kind of a team that's well suited to that, to the circumstances we had. People are now kind of saying, maybe I should have gone against the EO, maybe I should have just kind of taken a risk, and I'm definitely going to be kind of bearing that in mind going forward. But I think it's just a rare example this season perhaps of when the more solid picks haven't quite come through, and it's been all about those sort of quite straightforward but nonetheless sort of less owned players, likes of Trossard's, making a big difference with people. So maybe it is a case of just saying, you know what, let's just target these players, own the likes of Trossard for 1 week, 2 weeks. I mean, I've never really liked doing that in the past, owning players just for one fixture or two fixtures. But part of the reason why I did buy Bamford, for example, on the -4 last minute was because I thought, well, I'm really going to have two players in situ for Sheffield United at home, plus whoever it was. Diane was rubbish, 1, and 2 wasn't playing, so I thought I'd just kind of grab that. So I'm gonna try, I think, to target these teams going forward. So maybe Bamford could go for Lacazette or something like that, just to kind of continue targeting Sheffield United in game week 31. Nick, have you ever been a fan of targeting teams?
There's no harm in that kind of strategy. It's an alternative route. It's quite interesting as well to go sort of down that route of sort of targeting specific clubs and tripling up. And it kind of links in a little bit with sort of the whole concept of sort of compound differential. So like, just for instance, we saw at the start of the season some people going for triple Chelsea in defence, and that bared some excellent fruit. And it is a bit more aggressive, perhaps a little more risky than most managers would go for. But at this stage of the season, you've got kind of, I guess, I've always been a bit of a boring manager, and I've ended up with very boring overall ranks every season. So I certainly think there's no harm in trying to shoot for the moon and go for something a bit different, a bit alternative, just to boost up those rankings and get it something that's like, really good, as opposed to just respectable at the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we'll definitely talk about this a bit later on, but it's definitely something I'll be doing in order to do that. It's sort of time, I guess, where you could be maximising advantage. As I said right at the top, but at the moment we're having a little bit of a breather. It might be a time for managers to reorganise and kind of re-incentivise the teams. And if it goes wrong, you could think, now what you've done, beat a bum, you let all those other opportunities slip away. But really, it is time to kind of just think, well, if I don't take this chance now, I could end up with an okay rank. I might as well give it a go, try something slightly different, try to kind of go against the established template. I'm very, very, very envious of people with the wild cards still in their back pocket. That's for sure. We'll come on to that in the questions in a little bit. But I think it's definitely going to be a really interesting time over the home straight. We'll talk a bit more about this with Anthony in a more sort of formal way. As you can probably tell, we're just having kind of a bit of a meandering chat this time round. But we're definitely going to look into on the beach going forward, and definitely look into kind of ways in which teams do sort of tail off towards the end of this year, and how to kind of identify the motivated teams later on this week. But hopefully that was useful, just having like a general open chat about the sort of teams which are coming up on the radar, and which could help you in the home straight. Right, let's take a break there and move on to the usual stuff, the questions and the mini league update just after this.
Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
So we're back, and it's time to see what's been happening in the league. Just going to do a quick roundup of the top 5. So in 5th, dropping down, it's Elliot Worthington with Obi Wan-Bissaka. Only got the 47 points this week. I'd say more than me, but it's enough to get him a red arrow. It's Evgeny Becker with Russian Mafia climbing up into 4th with 54 points. Climbing up into 3rd as well as Victor Sandberg with 59 points. Pretty decent score. In 2nd, it's Ryan Hobbs with 48 points, Hobbsy's Heroes. But in 1st, it's actually a new number 1 in the league, and it's Sean McCall with Lucas Lever's Quavers. And he got 87 points on his 3 hits. That's just ridiculous.
Go on, Sean.
Triple Brighton defence, really doing the business there with Veltman and gang. Lingard, of course, Lucas Moura, interesting punt there, 9 points from him. Rafinha, Bamford, Kane, Antonio, just great score there, and he's up to and 2nd in France as well. So very, very impressive.
Yeah, he can be found on Twitter at MCColio09. So he's having an absolutely fantastic season. I think he's up in the top 100 now, if I remember correctly. Yeah, he's the 66th. So yeah, ridiculous stuff. Well done, Sean. Next up, the correspondence, which will return next in April with Anthony when he returns too. In the meantime, if you want to get your questions, queries, etc. in whogottheassist@gmail.com, we have a few obviously to get through, but we'll try to get through them all throughout the course of this season. So definitely do get questions into that. email account. Right, let's move on to the questions then. First one this week is a question of trust. So FPL Claret asks if there's any teams that look good on paper that we don't quite trust with our gut. It's quite an interesting one, actually, when you think about it. And I did have a look through kind of in the course of taking some notes for this pod. Admittedly, I was running around speaking to conveyancers, speaking to estate agents, and had a great time doing that over the last few days. So I haven't really had a chance to do too many notes. But one team who did have a good set of kind of end fixtures that I just wasn't interested in was Everton. So they've got decent ends to the season with Crystal Palace, Brighton, Spurs, Arsenal, Villa, West Ham, Sheffield United and Wolves both at home, and Man City to end with, and double game week in hand. But I don't know, like out of an interesting kind of luxury punt on Luca Dean, I'm just not too into them. I feel like the season's in drift for them a little bit, and there's only a Europa League spot for them to play for now, having been in the hunt for the Champions League. And I had a look at their data over the last kind of half of the season. So I looked at their heyday, game 1 to 14, game 15 till now. And in terms of kind of the comparison, it's really interesting how much they've kind of dropped off. So in the first kind of half of the season, or first half of the season up till now, and they were averaging 1.8 goals per game, 1.1 assists per game. That's now down to 1.1 goals per game, 0.8 assists per game. Their XG is down per game from 1.5 to 0.9. And they're just not taking that many kind of shots anymore. So there were 11.3 shots per game between game week 1 and 14. Game week 15-29, just 8. In terms of attempts on target as well, it's almost halved. So there were 5 attempts on target per game week 1 to 14, and just 2.9 between game weeks 15 and 29. There's a few big factors here, James, injuries, and perhaps an element of losing the element of surprise when it comes to his quality, not really working out anymore, alongside Doucouré and Allen being repeatedly injured, which meant the deputies weren't really up to scratch, and it's not really quite come together for Carlo's men, has it? So they would be the team that I know they've got a double game week, and I'm sure people will be piling back in. Flies Calvert-Lewin. We have kind of said, they've got Sheffield United. That could be a game that would be targeting. But outside of Luca Dean, I'm just not too interested in them, Nick. I mean, are there any other teams that you would not trust? Is it Everton for you too? What's your view here?
Yeah, I think, when we were picking the teams, I guess to cover in the main section, Everton didn't even gain a mention at all. They got completely neglected. I mean, we were trying to focus on teams that didn't get covered last week because we talked about the teams with the blank in 29. So Everton should have been a prime candidate, really. But yeah, as you said, they've just not really caught our eye at all. And they do have that double game week coming up. But certainly, I think their season, seems to be ending with a whimper, but I say that reluctantly because if you remember last campaign, they had some blank game weeks, so we all ignored the likes of Luca Dean at this particular moment in the season, and that's when he went on that ridiculous run of attacking returns, didn't he? And when we all owned him over the double game week periods, he did absolutely nothing. So I guess that is a little bit of a risk when we make these judgment calls, but certainly I do have some reservations there. I mean, I've got reservations pretty much over every single team right now. It's not really one team, but even like Liverpool, it's like they've got the fixtures but not the form. Wolves, they've got the fixtures but not the form. City have the form but not the fixture, stuff like that. So I don't really trust anyone at all, which sounds a bit negative, but I guess there's not really one other team to really call out. I guess most of the other teams we haven't mentioned, like Southampton, got a few good fixtures, 30 to 32, but obviously like the Crystal Palace, just an absolute no-go zone completely. So I think that's it.
I mean, how do you navigate this sort of situation then where you don't trust anyone? Do you kind of stick to the big players? I mean, you mentioned earlier on thinking about maybe buying Salah back in. We've noticed in the market force people kind of a flight back to safety with people getting Kevin De Bruyne and Bruno back in. I mean, how would you advise navigating this period then if you're kind of thinking, I don't trust anyone?
you can play it safe. I think certainly targeting the likes of Bruno, the likes of De Bruyne, if you don't own it, and Salah as well, is kind of a bit of a safe approach. These are tried and trusted assets that have delivered in the past. If no one's particularly delivering right now, then you're better off putting your money in that you know have had the form and the credibility at least in the past. So that's one approach. As I said before, perhaps not the most exciting approach. Perhaps the more exciting approach is to go for the punter, the more interesting punts, the likes of Jota or the likes of Neto at Wolves. Maybe that is the alternative approach, I guess.
Cool. All right. Maybe it will emerge over the course of the last sort of 8 game weeks. That's for sure. And over the course of the next 8, there's obviously a situation where you've got those people who've got chips in hand. So you people already kind of drafting wild cards, thinking about when they're going to play their triple captain, etc., and so on and so on. But Benny Blanco, we've got to call him Benny Blanco, Nick. We can't call him Benny. He is Benny Blanco. We've got to use both names, otherwise he gets really upset. But Benny Blanco, nonetheless, has written in and he's asked, well, this is what Benny Blanco said. He said, are there any tactics for those with no chips left to counteract these pesky wild carders? So Benny Blanco says, I've got a strong on paper side for game week 30. He's looking at jumping on Chelsea players early ahead of game week 31. Is that a viable strategy? To try to get ahead of the curve. This is such a good one, really, for just kind of thinking about strategies towards the end of the season and building on what we've already said. Benny Blanco could not have put it better himself if I had paid him. But I guess, definitely jumping on Chelsea. We've both kind of been quite behind that. And I think just in general, over the course of the last few years, what I've done towards the end is I've tried to kind of revert back to safety, play a very safe game, try to maneuver myself into better places and take fewer risks at the end of the season. Try to kind of, safely reverse park myself into where I need to be. But on the other side of it is the man late riser, this whole idea of upside chasing. And I know there's a few reservations about what we've seen because it's been a bit of a strange blank game week, as I spoke about earlier on, where basically everything that could have gone right went right for people who are making a free hit. But to be honest, from looking at that sort of idea, if you're not trying to consolidate, so many people should all go hand in hand and do this if you're trying to smash it, trying to go for that sort of, bet against the house sort of idea. And I'm certainly going to be trying to do this. As I mentioned earlier, I'll be probably captaining a Leeds asset against Sheffield United. The reason being, I've been bobbing around the 200 and 300k mark for the last 4 to 5 weeks. We spoke about this with Seb last week as well. And I really need to score a couple of sub 100k game week ranks to get where I want to be, which is top 100k. I know, I run a podcast, blah, 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 but that's kind of where I am at this point in the season. That's probably not going to happen by captaining the same players everybody else is captaining. I think Bruno this week against Brighton. I don't want to be shutting the back door. I want to be breaking down the front door is a way of looking at that. And I think that things like targeting Sheffield United, things like, jumping on the players that wildcards would be jumping on a little bit earlier, trying to be nimble and reacting to players and teams are popping up on the radar. We've really kind of given a few examples of teams that could do that. Is a good idea. I'm really looking at the last 8 game weeks as like a mini tournament and kind of like Project Reset was, I suppose. And I'm going to be trying to maximize my outcomes through gambling against the house as much as I can. So my mistake last year was I did really, really well in that bench boost game week where I got 120 or so. And then I took my foot off the gas and just started playing conservatively again. When what I could have done is I could have bought Mikel Antonio against Norwich. I decided, no, I'm going to roll my transfer now and then deal with it next week. I should have kind of kept the momentum going. Nonetheless, I strongly advise everybody not to do this because I've not done well doing this this year when I've tried to go against the house. So, for example, removing Spurs players in my Game Week 9 wildcard. It's just me having my own think tank. But maybe that's just my poor picks this year over anything else kind of impacting how I'm thinking about it. But I've said a few times, this is the season you shouldn't bet against the house. But as it is now, I don't think that captaining and owning the players that everybody else owns is going to do me very much because I'm going to keep getting grey arrows and ultimately keep bobbing around where I am. I need to kind of go for, this week, Bamford or Rafinha against Sheffield United. Next week, maybe think about bringing in the likes of Lacazette or the likes of Aubameyang, depending on the UEL, and going for something like that too. Nick, what do you reckon here? I mean, I think the kind of the ethos of Benny Blanco's question is, what do you do to counteract wildcarders? Like, you don't have your wildcard either. how are you planning to kind of navigate the last 8?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question there from Benny Blanco. So yeah, to answer Benny Blanco's question, I'm in a very similar scenario with the wild cards being absent. I don't have I've still got my triple captain, but otherwise my team's all right actually for this week, game week 30. But there is a serious flip in fixtures for my team come game week 31. So tripled up on Aston Villa. They've got Liverpool and Manchester City after that. I've got my Leeds players. They've got Manchester City, Liverpool, and Manchester United for their next 3. So they're going to be in the mud. You've got Spurs playing Manchester United as well in that particular game week. So my team just looks dreadful for that week. So I'm actually looking at that and saying, come game week 30, I might actually be tempted to just do a -8, just straight out of the hat. Get rid of all the crap. Just get rid of all the crap in my team. Get rid of the likes of Bale, the likes of Son, the likes of Watkins, and just load up on those players that I want for the final run. So as I said, what I was thinking about was maybe Nacho coming in, maybe Salah, maybe Jota, something like that. Loading up on those guys, just sorting the team out, getting it ready. Mini wild card. I don't have a wild card, but I can take a few hits just to prepare myself for that final run. So that's what I'm kind of viewing perhaps as a strategy, at least to counteract the wild card.
Yeah. Okay. So he's kind of just going for broke, effectively. Yeah. Interesting. I guess you said a few times that obviously I'd love to be where you are in the top 100k, but you keep saying that you always seem to end around that. So is it the case you're kind of thinking, well, it doesn't matter if you end 150k or kind of 50k, you want to kind of just aim for the kind of the ceiling there?
Well, yeah, I think you've got to really, haven't I? Because I think the last few campaigns, I've finished top 100k for the last few campaigns, but just haven't really stepped up. It's finished about 85k or around that point, which is just crap. Well, I mean, it's not crap. It's all right, but it's not. It looks rubbish compared to other people's records on Twitter. So I'll try to do something about that, I guess. So yeah, might as well. It might be a bit late now anyway, but yeah, worth going for it, I think.
Cool, fair enough. Right, next question. We've got to put ourselves back into people's shoes who are in an advantageous position here, Nick. So Steve, FPL Fairy, good mate of mine, met him in Brisbane not very long ago. More than a year ago now. Bloody hell. Met Steve over there, had a couple of beers with him. A really nice fella. He asked which game week looks the best for bench boost of those left. So he's still got that in his back pocket. Wow. And FPL Gear Snoop asked if game week 33, when the Spurs and City blank takes place, is the time to wild card. So, we've spoken about going Cityless already, but could that be a good time to go in there? And I guess to kind of start on that question, I mean, game week 33 looks great for going for it, because people are likely to still kind of be holding on to at least 2 City assets. I think Gundogan, Diaz, or something like that. As we said, at Spurs, people are probably going to be thinking, well, Kane and Son are going to be part of the zeitgeist for the rest of the season. They're like Callum Wilson and Ryan Fraser when they're at Bournemouth, sort of thing. Every now and again they're going to explode, and every now and again kind of the template, if they aren't in it anymore, is going to fail. Most would be heavily invested in there still, so jumping off and trying to attack the end of the season perhaps in different guys could be a really good idea. And to be honest with Steve, on the bench boost question, last year on Project Restart, I just looked for a decent fixture for the 15 players I had and went for it. I got 120 points that week when the game average was 60 odd. So I went from like 600k to 102k or something like that. So that's the extent of my failure that I ended up back at 200k. But basically I just went for it when all the fixtures aligned. And even though I was on Lonesome Street with it, I got very lucky with the likes of Charlie Taylor, returning 12 points off the bench. If you look at the example of this week with the free hit, when everything you could have planned did go well, once the fixtures do align with your team, I think that could be worth doing. Nick, for people in this situation, this very, very enviable situation with chips, I mean, what's your thinking about what's the best thing to do?
I'm probably going to be a bit boring by saying it very much depends on your team to a certain extent. Trying to align the wild card with the fixture shift. I mentioned that fixture shift for me. If I had my wild card, that would be a fantastic time to use it. Great time to take advantage of those changes and target some of those teams we mentioned at the beginning of the pod for the final season run-in. So that's perhaps a good shout. I think worth bearing in mind, of course, about the fixtures that still need to be rearranged. Some of those Everton Aston Villa double game weeks that will invariably come at some point. Spurs are going to have a double game week as well, where I might use my triple captain. So that might be an opportunity to use a wild card to target that specifically, or a bench boost for that week. And you could sort of wild card bench boost combo and have captain pick that gets you 30 points or something ridiculous. So, that's something you could do. Also, we know there's some rumours, massive double in the final week of the season as well, with stadiums full to the brim of fans. I'm not sure if that's going to happen in current climate or not.
It when I see it.
Yeah, exactly. But it's all very interesting. It might be something to keep your mind aware of. Imagine bench boosting for that. So wild carding, you don't really want to be wild carding game 37. You could do something really special and just have an amazing final week if that all comes to plan. But yeah, we obviously don't know if that's true or not at all.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So quite a lot of things open, and especially as well, if you've got a free hit, there's obviously a lot of good opportunities, including that 33. If you were going to take Gear Snoop's thing and have your free hits to the wild card. Great. And the penultimate question this week, it's a combined one. Harry Thake wrote in, is Aubameyang a good differential for the last bit of the season? And this was simultaneously entered into the question thread with a question from our friend Adam at 35 who asked, at what point do we abandon the plan if it isn't bearing fruit? Thinking of the Aubameyang experiment. He was a good pick on paper, Adam says, but now he seems less good. So you got one player saying, I'm going to buy Aubameyang, another player saying, I'm going to sell Aubameyang. And I love those sort of moments. Those pure poetry, aren't they? When they come in together, shows a differentiation in people. To speak about Aubameyang in particular, I think it's been really unlucky, Adam. It's hard to legislate for a fallout with the boss and have the death of the party like that. There's a really good piece by Art de Roche in The Athletic this week, which showed how him being positioned on the right as an inside forward, drifting inside, didn't really work versus West Ham, which left a lot of punters upset. A really fun fact is that Aubameyang has scored 205 points consecutively over the last couple of seasons. He's also scored 22 goals consecutively over the last 2 seasons. If he's to make that tally again, he needs to score 99 more points and he needs to score 13 more goals. So he'll need to score 12 more points per game week to get there. If you back him to do that and he does do it, wow, you can be absolutely amazing. Now, it's probably not going to happen. It's probably going to be a bit of a fallow year for Aubameyang. But we've identified previously a couple of game weeks where there are captainable games. So game week 31 against Sheffield United, 34 against Newcastle, and Nick mentioned West Brom, 35 against West Brom. So owning him could be a really nice boon for you potentially. A quick shout out here for Saka as well. Wow, he's the third biggest underperformer for XGI in FPL with 3.8 fewer goals and assists than he should have versus the expected. Nick, quick quiz. Who is the top underperforming asset for XGI this season?
Watkins?
No, it's Maldonado's man, Ivan Cavaliero, 4.41 underperformance. Second?
I've got no idea.
Give you a clue. He took his hair out and played guitar.
Sigurdsson.
No, Luke Ayling. Obviously in that goal.
I thought that was a David Bowie reference.
No. But Sigurdsson's a David Bowie. Okay. Okay, it's passing resemblance.
Ziggy, isn't it?
Yeah, all right. I'm with you. But yeah, Luke Ayling, 4.08 underperformance. Wow. So to answer Harry's question, yeah, absolutely a great differential. Aubameyang down to 11.2% owned, so it could be something in there. But Adam's question, music is my radar, as is psychology, and with owning a player that hasn't quite worked out, it makes me go sunk cost fallacy again. The idea of invested so much in this, so I've got to see it through. Always judgment call, and one I always fall prey to for when you pull out. Not alone though, you see people like your average Joe FPL account, right through to those espousing objectivity and the likes of the analytics crowd, falling prey to sunk cost fallacy. So it's really a case of kind of looking at objective sort of measures and kind of thinking, you know what, it's good to kind of not be like, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm not going to push this through to the end. Just think a little bit about is there objectively a better choice I can make with that spot in my team? And look at things like, the UEL or Aubameyang's minutes and that ongoing relationship with Arteta to kind of navigate that. And of course, kind of ask questions and ask people to challenge your thinking. As long as the challenge is posed respectfully, it's probably a good idea to listen to it. Nick, what do you reckon to all that?
I don't know about Aubameyang, to be honest. I think certainly he's an interesting punt. I think it might have been one that could have been hugely successful. I saw a number of accounts that kind of went for that differential captain actually last week. A bit of a nostalgic pick from last season before. But yeah, it's not really worked out for him, has it? And as you said, sort of being shunted onto the right wing has kind of really impacted him this campaign in terms of attacking returns. So he's not for me. I think it's partly as well because of the cost of Aubameyang, just mainly the fact he's 11.5 million. That money can certainly be spent better elsewhere. I think certainly you can have to spend quite a chunk of your budget just to keep him in your team. And there's plenty of other midfielders that excite me more at this moment in time.
What about this whole idea of having a plan and sticking to it versus when you jump off that plan just admit defeat? Like, what's your threshold normally?
I think you've got to. You've got to maintain flexibility. I'm always one to admit when something doesn't go my way and make a change and accept defeat. There obviously has been past seasons where like I've rigidly stuck by Eden Hazard through thick and thin and made massive faux
putting
pas.
On the classics now.
Sort of about 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, probably now. But I think you've got to be flexible with your picks, and even if, as I said, I've rubbished players and then I've brought them in because they've hit form. So I think I'm not a fan of managers that kind of have one thought in the head and will never differ from that particular thought, or I'm very much encouraged trying to look as much of a wider picture, take as much information as possible in before making your decisions.
Yeah, exactly. I've been in that situation and it wasn't easy, but nothing is. Oh, right. So let's move on to the final question this week. And it's Andrew Helmstetter again, who reliably kind of comes in to ask about captains. He says, there's a lot of options on the table over the international break. And obviously there's some things that do change. But what captaincy options are in our minds this week? And obviously it's a nice bridge question to the transfers and captains this week. Starting off with the captains then, there's obviously quite a few on the table. Harry Kane away at Newcastle, Bruno at home to Brighton. I know that will probably be the EO capture point, where people will go, oh, well, Bruno's got a home game. Yeah, let's do that. Or maybe they'll go for Kane. So again, I'm going to go for choice 3, which is likely to be Bamford or Rafinha, as I've mentioned earlier on. I think Rafinha has massive explosion potential in him. As I said last week with Seb on that pod, that he's the guy who's bossing both the threat and creativity column of the stats. So I'm bossed there. But in the process of doing this pod that I've seen on Fantasy Football Scout, the sheer number of chances conceded for Sheffield United through the middle. So if there is one guy who's getting lots of chances centrally, it is Bam Bam. So he could be the man who we decently owned. Obviously, he's showing up in the sale for some reason now, but he could be the one who shows up as being quite a decent logical captain. And he's also got the roots to points through penalties as well. But as I said, Rafinha is the one at the moment who I am kind of thinking could well be a decent sort of low owned. I think only 1 in 5 managers own him. He could be the one that could be my captain, but it's between Rafinha and Bam Bam. I'm not looking anywhere else. I think it'll be those two. Obviously, maybe I will kind of get stuck in confirmation bias mode, but I think I've got to kind of from speaking to you, Nick, through this pod, I think it might be worth kind of going fully on that route of targeting Sheffield United. What about you? Are you kind of just thinking, well, it's Bruno time, Kane maybe against Newcastle? I don't really know what you're thinking here, actually.
Yeah, I haven't really mentioned it, have I? I've actually got quite a big fear about Bamford. I think, he's certainly the big risk for damaging my overall rank again this week. And I think, so don't captain Bamford, sell him. Because I think, he probably is a really good shout for the captain's armband if you are looking outside the more boring picks, let's say. I mean, I do have Bale and Sutton, and that was one of the reasons I wasn't really sure about captaining Kane, because I felt like I'm backing my own team too heavily here, going all out for broke, saying that Spurs are gonna essentially quadrupling up on the Spurs attack against Newcastle. So it's always a recipe for disaster when you go for something like that. Though I do actually have the armband on him at the moment on my screen, so he's possibly going to be the one that I go for. Bruno obviously is the other one. That's a very boring pick, isn't he? So he's an option, of course, but at the moment it's on Kane. I just don't think I've even changed it since last week. Haven't really thought about it, to be honest. So normally I make a decision on the pod, but also and tend to stick with it. But this week I'm really up in the air. In terms of the transfers, though, I'm really keen on Alonso, as I said earlier on in the pod. Perhaps selling Cancelo. I've got a bit of cash actually, so I could even sell someone else. But thinking about Alonso in just for that West Brom game, I've just got a little bit of excitement in my mind about that one. See if that works out. Probably not. He's probably not going to play. But yeah.
All right. So I'm looking at going the other way. So I'm transferring out Ola Aina. I've got £9 million to spend, so I'll be selling Ola Aina, and I'm probably going to be looking at boring Dave over the sexy option of Alonso. So going with the latter day Diaz and Stones in Rudiger and Azpilicueta, just because I think Alonso's got players who can sub in for him, but Azpilicueta, club captain, etc., I'm sure that Mr. Tickle is going to want to finish as high as he can in the league, as well as prioritising the Champions League. So I think it's going to be Azpilicueta for me, but I mean they're all 10%. Below 10% owned. So at the end of the day, it's all very good. I love the explosive potential of Alonso. I love the nostalgia pick. I can just randomly see Chilwell playing and then Alonso showing up in the Champions League. I just don't know. I could be tempted onto Alonso. I'm not saying that I'm definitely getting Azpilicueta at this point. Nice pod, Nick. I've gotten through 3 beers during this pod, so apologies for any slurring or non sequiturs. I think that's a lot, isn't it, this time?
Yeah, we're done. So we were Who Got the Assist. Thanks so much for listening. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. I think we're going to see Stag hopefully back for the next pod. We might do his favourite on the beach special. I think that's the plan.
Yeah,
his return. And we also, for old time's sake, snuck in another little theme as well. So a few oddball references here and there for our music fans who listen to the pod.
Yeah, it won't be in every week. Just one we'll throw in while we've got these OG pods going on. They won't be here next week. On that note, thanks so much for listening. I'm finally moving house this Friday, meaning I'll hopefully be set up in time for next game week. Yep, I've conveniently timed this over the international break. Have a great break before the run-in. Relish this time away from fantasy football. It's been pretty relentless, hasn't it? In the meantime, I hope you can think about that kind of home straight at least. And we look forward to come back with Anthony and the correspondence in early April. Ciao for now. Take care and speak to you from my new house very, very soon.
Bye-bye.
Cool. All right. Thanks, mate. Take care. Speak soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist?